Most people see the American road trip as pure freedom, a spontaneous escape into the open land. But for millions, especially women and people of color, every mile held a hidden threat. This journey wasn't always about seeing the country. It was about surviving it, a stark contrast to the easy image we all grew up with. The highway held secrets many refused to speak about. So, even with that dark side, the pull of the open road is still this massive part of American culture. Every single summer, millions of people pack up their cars and just go. But why? What makes the road trip so special here? In most places, a long drive is just a boring way to get from point A to point B. But in America, the trip is the point. A professor at Stanford, Allison Hobbs, even teaches a whole class on it. She says it's an experience that almost every American has at some point in their life. And it's not just some old-fashioned family vacation thing, either. The typical adventure traveler today isn't some 28-year-old guy. It's actually a 47-year-old woman. And a huge number of women, around 72%, are now taking trips completely on their own. So how did we get here? How did a simple drive become this core piece of American identity? To understand that, we have to go back and look at how it all started, from the very first adventurers to the hidden stories that truly shaped what the open road means today. You might think America's love affair with the road trip started with the invention of the car, but the truth is, it goes back way, way further. The idea of a long journey being a core part of the American experience was already baked into the culture. Think about it. Long before cars existed, a young George Washington made a nearly 1,000-mile round trip on horseback, deep into the wilderness west of the Appalachian Mountains. He was just delivering a letter, but his journey became a story of adventure, discovery, and taking on the vast, untamed landscape. It had all the ingredients of a modern road trip. And you see this same idea in classic books like The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, where the real story isn't the destination. It's the wandering and self-discovery that happens along the way. So when the first cars finally showed up, they were a perfect new tool for this old tradition. But it was anything but easy. The very first cross-country trip, back in 1903, was done by a guy named Horatio Jackson who barely even knew how to drive. He only did it because of a $50 bet. His trip was a total disaster. He blew a tire just 15 miles in. People gave him bad directions on purpose, sending him 100 miles out of his way. At one point in Oregon, after 2 more flats, he literally had to wrap thick ropes around his wheels just to keep going. And for most people, it was impossible. A car cost more than double what the average person made in an entire year. And once you left a city, there were no real roads and definitely no gas stations. But even with all those problems, people saw the dream. One writer at the time predicted a future with great national highways stretching from ocean to ocean, letting everyone, rich or poor, get out and see the country. This vision tapped right into that old American myth of going west to find something real and authentic. It echoed the stories of the Oregon Trail and the Gold Rush. And that's the key. The journey itself started to mean more than the destination. It wasn't just about getting from A to B. It was about finding a connection to the country, to the landscape, and to yourself. That dream of the open road started to become a reality in the 1920s as the idea of driving just for fun began to take hold. But the real game changer wasn't just the cars, it was the roads themselves. Starting in the 20s and picking up speed during the Great Depression and especially after World War II, America started paving the nation. The government built a massive system of new highways, connecting cities and towns like never before. Suddenly, a trip that took 3 long weeks in the 1930s could be done in just 4 days by 1960. This didn't just make travel faster, it made it possible for almost everyone. As cars got cheaper and the new middle class started getting paid vacation time, hitting the road became a new American tradition, and an entire world popped up to support it. Motels appeared along every major route, offering a cheap and easy place to sleep for the night. Roadside diners and gas stations were everywhere. For the first time, a regular family could pack up the station wagon and drive out to see the Grand Canyon or visit relatives across the country. The road trip became a way for families to bond, to explore, and to feel connected to the huge, diverse landscape of America. It became a ritual, but it's important to remember that this classic, romantic image of just hitting the road with no worries wasn't the reality for everybody. As Professor Allison Hobbs points out, that kind of freedom was really only available to some. For many others, especially African Americans and women traveling alone, the open road held very different kinds of dangers and challenges. For a huge number of Americans, that open road simply wasn't open at all. For Black families, a road trip wasn't a spontaneous adventure. It was a carefully planned operation. Because during the Jim Crow era, the freedom of the open road could be a death trap. While a white family might just see where the road would take them, a Black family had to plan every single stop. Where could you buy gas? Where could you get a meal without being turned away? Or worse, where could you safely spend the night? As one history professor put it, the road trip wasn't a fun, discover-yourself journey. It was just hard. To survive the road, they needed a guide, and they got one. It was called the Negro Motorist Green Book, first published in 1936 by a postal worker named Victor H. Green. This little book was a literal lifesaver. It listed gas stations, restaurants, and hotels that were safe for Black travelers. Green used his network of other postal workers to gather information and help people avoid the constant threat of humiliation and violence. Professor Hobbs even calls it a 20th century version of the Underground Railroad for travelers. And the danger was very, very real. Even celebrated places like national parks often had segregated campgrounds. The brutal reality of this fear was seared into the nation's memory in 1955 with the murder of Emmett Till. He was a 14-year-old boy who was lynched while visiting relatives in Mississippi. An act that simple, visiting family, could get you killed. This history has left a long shadow. Even today, national park visitors are nearly 80% white. The road might be legally open to everyone now, but the echoes of who it was originally built for are still with us. But for the people who could travel freely, something fundamental began to change. The point of the trip stopped being about getting to a destination. The trip itself became the destination. As Stanford professor Allison Hobbs explains, the real magic of the road trip is in its randomness. It's that feeling of not knowing what's around the next bend. This is the classic image we all know, made famous by writers like Jack Kerouac. It's about being out on the road just for the sake of it, hungry for a new experience. The journey is what matters, not where you end up. It's an idea that goes back to the very beginning of car travel. One writer in the early 1900s called the automobile a vacation agent, something that taught people about nature and the country. He wasn't talking about getting to a resort, he was talking about the drive. And this idea really took hold after World War II. The economy was booming, more families had cars, and the brand new interstate highway system was spreading across the country. Suddenly, travel got a whole lot easier and faster. A drive that took 3 weeks in the 1930s could be done in just 4 days by 1960. This gave people the freedom to slow down and just experience the drive. The trip could take on a life of its own. The famous author John Steinbeck put it perfectly when he said, "We find after years of struggle that we do not take a trip takes us." But this romantic idea of a spontaneous, free-flowing journey was a luxury. It was a story that left a lot of people out.